you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just thank our chairman for holding this hearing. I think, Mr. Chairman, we are now into the area that we should be into, and that is the future. And that we have a very distinguished panel, and I appreciate our witnesses staying with us this afternoon.
Come over. Okay.
Excuse me, Senator DeWine, I apologize. I should have made note of this. Judge Webster had a commitment that required him to leave after this morning's session. He regrets that he's not going to be with us. If there are questions that you would like to submit to Judge Webster for subsequent follow-up, I'm certain.
Just threw away a third of my questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Mr. Hamilton, I think one of the things, Congressman, that's going to come out of this joint inquiry that we have is the understanding that Congress, and specifically the intelligence committees, have some responsibility for any of the intelligence failures that did in fact occur leading up to September 11th. I think that's going to be part of it. We're going to talk about that, I hope, in the report. You have really a unique perspective. You served for a number of years on the House Intelligence Committee. You chaired the committee, you chaired the Iran-Contra Committee. Now you've had a few years to reflect. I wouldn't say sit back and reflect, but reflect on this and continue to study it. What recommendations do you have for the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee and Congress in regard to oversight, in regard to structure, in regard to how we can better do our job? How do we, for example, when we are dealing with agencies that have very closely guarded information, understandably, how do we know even what questions to ask them? How do we exercise our constitutional responsibility in this very, very important area?
Senator DeWine, you're right. There is no independent oversight of the intelligence community except the Congress. And therefore, I think the Congress has an additional responsibility. All congressional committees have some oversight responsibilities. Here, I think it weighs especially heavily. And because the intelligence community is such a technical business, it's not easy for a member of Congress to come onto an intelligence committee and understand the intelligence community. The first thing I would say to you is that you should approach your job with a lot of skepticism. I don't mean that to be negative. I just mean you have to be willing to be critical of testimony and of propositions that are put to you. You have to be a partner and a critic at the same time. Your job is to try to improve the intelligence community, but your job also is to be very critical and to do it as positively and constructively as you can, and to not to be overwhelmed by the intelligence committees or the community. It took me a long time to get acquainted with the terminology and to be comfortable with the budget. And I think the key requirement is for individual members to be skeptical. I think, secondly, you have to hire a very good staff. And that staff has to have technical capabilities that you may not possess, or I certainly did not possess as a member of the committee. Because you're dealing with people who are testifying, like General Odom often did, on very technical matters. You have to put in a lot of hours at it and take it as one of your #1 priorities. So I don't have any magic solution for you with regard to structure. I think, and may I say overall that I think the Congressional Intelligence Committees, both Senate and House, over a period of years have done a very good job. They've been fortunate to have very good leaders. You have two good leaders here today, Senator Graham and Congressman Goss.
We certainly do.
And looking back, I think, I know the House situation a little better than the Senate, but I think the House chairman over the, I hope Mr. Goss would agree with me here, have been quite good. So that's key. The staff director plays the heaviest burden in making the committee function well after the two chairmen, and they have to be highly qualified and very, very good. I told Senator Rockefeller a moment ago that I think I'd remove the term limits on the positions. Maybe a compromise position would be to extend them, but 8 years I think is too short a time. And because it takes you so long to get into it and to know where the problems are in the community.
Good.
Senator DeWine,
Either
could
of our
I-
other panelists, Mr. Hitz, would you like to comment, please?
I would. I'd like to do it perhaps from what you would regard as a parochial perspective, but having been the Inspector General at CIA, let me say that the support of this committee, you after all created that office. You had to fight hard to create it. And the support of this committee on the work of an Inspector General is absolutely critical. If you were not attentive to our product, our reports, if you were not, whether you agreed with them or not, if you were not alert to the issues that we were trying to set forward, put a light on, just as the Director of Central Intelligence, to whom each Inspector General reports initially must do so, then that process, insofar as it helps you with your oversight responsibility, would wither. And I can guarantee you that no Inspector General doing his job in Washington can get along without an oversight committee that encourages, helps with staffing, reads the product, follows up on some of the matters that are appropriate for them to follow up on. And
Good.
I hope,
Thank you.
and I hope, and I'm sure you're doing that.
General, any
DeWine,
comments?
one of the things I was always worried about was that we were spending too much time on covert actions. There's something kind of interesting and catchy about covert actions, and they are very important. But when I was on the committees, we spent an enormous time reviewing covert actions. They're clearly important, but it can distort your vision a little bit, and you don't put enough emphasis on collection and analysis, quality of intelligence.
Do you think that might also be a historical legacy of concern of Congress missing something?
Yes, I think so.
Paranoia or just concern, one or the other, but it's
Right.
interesting point. General?
I looked at the committees after I became accustomed to the system, the way I think a college president would look at a college board. You were the source of my money, and you had an oversight. You couldn't hire and fire me. I guess you could impeach me, but the Secretary of Defense and the DCI could do that. But this was not original with me. I was discussing this once with the provost at Boston University under John Silver, and he after we talked about college boards, I was on one at the time. We were talking about what you expect your board to do, and I found that model very insightful, and it fits very much with what Congressman Hamilton said about you need to be critical, but you have to be supportive, and it has to be a symbiotic relationship. I mean, you'd like to have it there.
Good. Thank you. Let me move to a question that you were dealing with this morning, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I think it is very important, and I want to delve into it a little further, and that has to do with the role of the DCI. I found it interesting that all four witnesses, if I'm summarizing correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but seem to believe that the DCI should have more power, but we break down there on any kind of consensus. It seems that if we have people who are very knowledgeable in this area from different backgrounds, and if you at this point in your careers cannot reach any consensus, it maybe gives us a good indication of why we have a hard time making any change here. But Let me start first, though, with Congressman Hamilton. You talk about a director of national intelligence. How do you, if our goal, which it certainly is my goal, if our goal is to make that person stronger, how do we do that while at the same time removing any direct command authority he has or any direct authority he has to run a department? What stops him from becoming a drug czar? Now we have an intelligence czar with all the problems that are connected with that. And maybe all I need for you to do is just to expand a little bit on.
Senator DeWine, it's just a very tough, difficult problem, and I don't want to suggest that my thoughts are carved in granite on it. I think you have to have someone who oversees the entire intelligence operation. And that means the direct answer to your question is they have to have budget authority, and if they have budget authority, then they're going to be able to get a lot of things done.
And you believe in the cabinet, member of the cabinet?
Well, I said cabinet level. I would think it's a terribly important position. Really, the key in all of this, whether you're talking about strengthening the DCI or having a DNI, is the relationship of that person to the president, because power flows from the president. And if that relationship is good, as it has often been in the past, it works pretty well. And then on several occasions, all of us can remember it was not a good, close, candid relationship, and it didn't work well. So no matter what kind of a structure you have, as in so often the case in organization, it depends on the personalities. But this dual hat role that General Odom referred to earlier in his testimony, I just don't think it works very well. You cannot be head of the intelligence community and head of the CIA at the same time. There's a conflict there. And I want someone over all of that. And I must say my thinking is in part guided by the whole sense of accountability. The intelligence community is too mushy. You can't find who's responsible. And you need to be able to call one person on the map, on the carpet, and say, by golly, you're the guy in charge, and you perform or not. We have enough trouble with accountability in our government without having the whole exercise run by an intelligence community, I think. So I would give them not only power over the budget, I would give them power to manage too. And
as you mentioned, we talked about this morning, and as I think Mr. Hitz said, you know, the problem of getting this politically getting this done, we all know, and that is that you have the 800-pound gorilla of the SecDef and other problems, and it's you know, unless.
But if you take that budget authority out of DOD for these various systems and put it under the Director of National Intelligence, it's going to make a whale of a difference as to how the place is run. I don't want to denigrate the military intelligence, but military intelligence is very important, but it's not the whole world of intelligence. There are a lot of things we need intelligence on other than the military. And when 4/5 of the budget, or whatever the percentage is, goes to run by the military, the Defense Department, that means a lot of other things are going to be neglected while you're providing military intelligence. Military intelligence is important, but it's not the whole world. And you need people who can tell you whether India is going to produce a nuclear weapon or not, or whether the Soviet Union is going to collapse. And those are not strictly military questions.
Good. Yeah.
I'd like to comment just briefly on this. NSA supplies information to probably more agencies than any other intelligence organization. So it has a big customer base. Only one of those is the Defense Department. Defense Department is only one of those. At least 2/3 of the people who are collecting SIGINT are in uniform.
General, let me just interrupt you, though. Isn't it true that the budget, though, is controlled through defense? And we've had defense budget.
Yeah, but I want to make a point about budget.
No, I want my only point is, whoever controls the money controls the priorities, and when it comes down to crunch time, and we've seen in this committee, sometimes behind closed doors, examples of where the priorities get worked out. And
but can I finish this point?
Absolutely.
I was going to point out that you have a huge amount of defense money providing massive intelligence to the civilian community, to the civilian users. The problem I had at NSA was that the military was upset that they were working for non-military people most of the time. And the biggest part of NSA's customer base, except in really wartime, or particularly against the Soviet Union, a lot of it went to the military. But the bulk of NSA's output was being used by other people. So, I mean, the whole drug business, Director Casey used to say, you're producing 80% of the intelligence that supports the drug war. And we're producing it with soldiers and sailors and airmen. So I think when you try to draw those lines, that's where the practical business, I think you can have a lot of authority with program management. Once the Secretary of Defense fences the money for the National Foreign Intelligence Program, then the DCI has unrestricted authority to move it around within that fence.
Okay, I've got to
even if it's defense money. Okay.
Let me just move on, and I apologize, but my time is running out. Mr. Hitz, on October 21st, 2001, the Washington Post, you said, the time has come to take off the gloves, to loosen inappropriate restraints, and even more importantly, to acquire the skills to understand and penetrate bin Laden's circle. Take off the gloves.
Well,
You got about 60 seconds.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to give you.
Again, all of this
Anything that we haven't done the last year, that was a year ago. So.
Yeah, all of this is well familiar to this committee. My view of it is that all of the approvals that were necessary to deal with controversial or agents who had disreputable backgrounds have been streamlined. I think there should continue to be kind of good oversight from the standpoint of the chain of command, but I'm not sure that each of these cases had to go to the Director of Central Intelligence when you were thinking about picking up a felon as an advisor. Good. But let me just make my final pitch for the kind of training in area studies and in languages that all of us know are critical. And if you're looking at it from the standpoint of a teaching institution, if you can't get people to study the Arabic language, do what we did in the old days, the old-fashioned way, bribe them. We had a National Defense Education Act once that made monies available to students to study hard languages if they were willing to commit their services to the government for a period afterwards. That's lapsed with the passage of time.
That's an excellent idea.
It may be one way to deal with it.
Let me ask any of the panel members this question. We've heard testimony recently from Secretary Armitage and Secretary Wolfowitz that both of them believe that one of the biggest problems with our intelligence and analysis is that the agencies strive for consensus and don't always encourage dissemination of dissonant views. I wonder if you agree or disagree with that.
I agree with it. I think there's tremendous pressure on the analysts to reach a consensus. The broader the consensus, the more general and sweeping the conclusion is, the less valuable it is. I think you want to encourage competition among your analysts and have majority and minority reports. If I were the President of the United States, I'd want some sense of the bureaucratic view, both for and against a given course of action. I want competition among analysts. I think the minority needs to be protected. I think they need to be encouraged to speak up.
Anybody else want to comment?
I
General?
would briefly say, I would strongly encourage members to go try to find the situation and look at it directly where intelligence is used to make decisions. You're exactly right about reaching a consensus on the national intelligence estimates, the national documents that are produced by the National Intelligence Council. Even within some agencies like DIA, et cetera, there are consensus kinds of problems. It's in my experience that almost no decisions are made on that kind of intelligence. I'm looking for somebody to show me how an NIE caused the policy to change. The major advantage of an NIE is that it makes the intelligence community share its information base. You were talking about a problem of sharing for counterterrorism. That's with the FBI and people outside. We have made great progress in getting a common intelligence information base in the community. If you go where decisions are made, you'll find the user deeply involved in the intelligence process himself. Give you an example. When we were building the M1 tank in the Army, the thickness of the frontal glacis of a T-80 tank was very important. 10 millimeters of difference would have changed it from a 120 gun to a 105 gun. It was very easy. I had the responsibility of deciding which way to go on that. And I was a big 105 gun fan, but I finally said, okay, I'm going to go this way. That pushed about $18 billion around to upgun to 120. Now, that's where intelligence really plays. I've never understood the big brouhaha about not predicting the end of the Soviet Union. It doesn't make any difference. Tell me what we would have done differently if we'd known it was going to end. Or the issue of how much the Soviets are spending on defense. Nobody cared. It was a political game. The CIA and the rest of the intelligence community played for the press. We didn't spend our money to buy based on how many rubles or dollars they spent. I want to know how many, my army wanted to know how many tanks we had to kill. So it was what we should be tested against is whether we counted the number of tanks and knew what it took to kill them. And that's where intelligence plays. And I go to the State Department and find where intelligence really helps them in their negotiations. And that's the test. It's not whether there's competitive analysis or these other kinds of things. So I have kind of a practical heads-on view. If you want an answer to that that's clear, you're going to have to go absolutely look and make people show you the causal linkage.
Good. Well, let me thank all three of you. Appreciate your testimony. I think it's been very helpful.